Welcome to our public affairs program here at Catamount Radio. We call this Catamount Community Connection. I'm Brian Collamore, and of course, every week you've been listening, and I'm still getting great feedback. And we talk to folks from the business world, the professional world, the nonprofit world, and certainly political arenas as well. Our program is brought to you by the Rutland County Agricultural Society, which is bringing you the Vermont State Fair, and it's coming up August 13th through 17th. And so that sounded, or at least at one point, it sounded like a long time away. It's about a month away as you hear this program. And I'll just mention this again. Tyler Hubbard is the big act on Saturday night, finishing up the fair. And if you don't have tickets yet, I would urge you not to wait. You can buy them even as you hear this program. Go online to ParamountVT.org. And you can buy your Tyler Hubbard tickets, because I'm pretty sure that's going to be a sold-out show, and you don't want to be left out. So we thank the Vermont State Fair for their sponsorship. And it is great to welcome back a couple of folks who have been our guests in the past. Hilary Solomon, who's the manager of the Poultney Mettowee Natural Resources Conservation District, and also Jerremy Jones, who's a trustee of the Lake St. Catherine Association. We can talk a little bit about both of those entities if you want. Maybe we'll start with Hilary. I know you went to Duke. And I'm remembering some of the other things that the last time we had you on, we had you sort of give us a little bit of a biography, if you want. And your district is the oldest one in Vermont. There are 14 of them. And it was created back in 1940. It was actually a creation of the federal government. Many people can remember, well, probably not remember. Well, maybe some are still old enough to remember. The Dust Bowl, and that's where it all started for the conservation districts. And one of the things that came to light in the Senate Agriculture Committee, where I sit, is that people really like doing business with our conservation districts because there's no regulatory outreach there. It's strictly one of helping people out, educating people, and getting them support for doing some really good things. So tell us a little bit more about Hilary Solomon all over again.
Well, thank you very much, Senator Collamore. It's great to be here today. Yes, so I grew up on the West Coast, went to school for undergraduate out in Washington State, where I studied natural science with sort of a chemistry and biology emphasis, and worked on actually a lake restoration plan for a small lake called Sylvia Lake that was near Tacoma, Washington, and then went to graduate school at Duke University, where I got a degree in water resources. And I really enjoyed my graduate work. I feel like I do use the skills that I learned in those classes to this day. And I had always admired the conservation districts. They're fairly visible out west. They're called soil and water conservation districts out there. They work very closely with the Natural Resource Conservation Service, or NRCS. And so they were sort of visible. I knew about them. I volunteered with a conservation district in Ohio, working on many types of projects similar to the ones we work on today: exclusion fencing, cover cropping, very much working with farms through that conservation district. And now work for the Poultney Mettowee Conservation District, where we work on not just on agricultural projects, but we do a lot of stormwater work. We work with the lake associations quite a bit. We do assessments where we try to identify projects, water quality or soil health projects, and then find funding, work with landowners to find funding so that we can address issues that we find on the landscape. We do a lot of education and outreach. And we're just starting to work with forest landowners because we're realizing that the forested landscape is quite a bit of our landscape in this watershed. And through some of the phosphorus reduction programs that we'll be talking about later, I'm sure, does contribute phosphorus to Lake Champlain and our other inland lakes and streams. So we're just starting to reach out to those landowners, and there are some funds available now to work on forest land projects. So I'm excited to learn, to meet and work with that cohort as well.
So you're a West Coast gal. How did you get to Vermont?
Well, I met a Vermonter in graduate school, and he sells roofing slate. So, of course, you have to do that in Vermont. So we ended up, moving back to Vermont.
Okay. And joining us also, I mentioned Jerremy Jones, a trustee of the Lake St. Catherine Association, also a member of the Federation of Vermont Lakes and Ponds. And your bio is kind of interesting too, Jeremy. You actually, let's see, it says grandfather and grandmother purchased a cottage on West Lake Road in 1957. I guess they just had numbers for them back then, right? Camp number 1, camp number 2, so it was camp number 10. And so you kind of grew up on the lake. And then in 2015, your family decided to sell that camp and purchase a 4-season property on Cones Point. And since then have been there all the time. And then you joined the Lake St. Catherine Association, I think, in 2016, and became a trustee in 2018. So I guess I already answered the question how you got to Vermont. You were already here, right?
Yeah, my grandmother and grandfather bought a camp on Lake St. Catherine back in the mid-'50s there. And so I've been coming up to Lake St. Catherine since I was a little kid. Baby, actually, there's pictures of me, in the water when I'm a little one. And so every summer we were up there having fun, going fishing, and always thought about having a place there full time. And we got that opportunity back in 2015, and we went for it as a family. And we put a lot of work in. And so now that we're so involved in the lake, we wanted to obviously get involved more with the conservation and the protection of the lake. And that was the Lake St. Catherine Association, a great group of folks that work really hard to take care of the lake and maintain the lake.
Do you know how many camps there were at the beginning? If they had camp number 10, how far up did the numbers go, or do you know?
Yeah, so they used to have a numbering system back in the day, and we were camp number 10, and I don't know if it carried all the way around because there was camp number 1, and we were camp number 10 as it went south, I believe. My dad will correct me if I get this wrong. So, but all the camps were numbered, but then obviously with safety and things like that, they started putting 911 addresses, and some camps still refer to we're camp number or whatever.
No kidding.
But there's also 911 addresses for safety. Yeah.
I happen to be over at Lake Sunapee. My brother has a dock there. It doesn't have a house on the lake, but I often, whenever I'm around a lake or a pond, I wonder if 50 or 60 years ago, if I'd been around, would I have been smart enough to get a location and get as much land as I could around it to sort of protect myself. Now it's almost impossible, especially Lake Sunapee. I don't know if either of you have ever been over that way, but it's a beautiful lake, kind of a long, narrow, almost a Lake George type lake. And I don't think you can get even a half acre of land there for under $1 million. So, the prices have gone crazy. I'm sure the same was true and is probably true now at Lake St. Catherine or Lake Bomazene or Lake Dunmore, because there's, guess what, only so much. And but I often wonder about, that kind of thing. And then what's the next thing coming that if you did something today, 50 years from now, of course, I probably won't be around in 50 years, but, could you kind of cash in on whatever the next thing is? So I always wonder about that, and that's why I asked how many camps there were originally, because at one point there weren't any camps, right? It was just a lake, and people would probably come and do day trips, and then somebody might, let's buy a piece of land there and put a cottage in.
Yeah, there's a cool scrapbook. It's called the Lake St. Catherine scrapbook that was put together many, many years ago, and there's a copy of that on our website that folks could check out. And back in the day, there's all these great stories about how Lake St. Catherine was like a retreat from the city. So people would come up from New York City, and there were inns and hotels on the lake that people would stay at. And there's all these excellent photos and postcards of those old buildings that were on the lake. And then camps started coming on, and now it's a very developed lake. And so that's why the great work that we do with Hilary and Poultney Mettowee are to make sure that all that development doesn't impact the lake, and make sure that water is rushing into the lake from these properties and carrying sediment and phosphorus to make sure that we can keep the lake healthy.
We've all, I think, over the years heard stories about Bomazene and the island that's in the middle there, and the Groucho Marx and all those folks, the kind of the actresses and famous actors from New York City would come up, I assume, by train. and somehow get out, because it's an island, so they must have had a boat, or they were pretty good swimmers, and they would come out and that's where they spent the summer, I guess, right?
Yeah, as part of the Lakewise program that I'm sure we'll talk about a little later, I had met one award winner, and she told me that she thinks that Helen Keller actually stayed at her place way back in the day, and there was a Boy Scout camp on the lake at one point. I don't know if it was necessarily Boy Scout, but it was a boys camp, and there was a girls camp, so it's gone through a lot of changes throughout the years.
Yeah, and you're right. Unfortunately, as human intervention becomes more and more prevalent, the danger to these bodies of water becomes more serious, and you sort of have to step in and do some preventive work, or else after a while there won't be anything left to enjoy. So even though at one point nobody would have ever thought about that, and I'm sure there was direct discharge into the bodies of water from storm runoff, but also sewer and stuff, and so it's really a testament to both of you that you're doing such a good job there. We talk a lot about the phosphorus on sort of the left side of Vermont, and nitrogen is apparently what rules the roost on the other side, the Connecticut River. They don't talk about being worried about phosphorus over there. They're worried about the nitrogen level. So anyway, Hilary, I wanted to mention, because I didn't realize this until I looked it up in advance of getting together with you. I mean, it's on your website, so it isn't like a secret to you. The Poultney Mettowee district, the conservation district, is actually 17 Vermont towns, but there are Vermont and New York towns. I didn't realize there were actually New York towns involved in your conservation district until I looked at that. And I know there's a Rutland conservation district, so some people may sort of have a confusion about how it's all sort of laid out.
Yes, so it's interesting because a lot of conservation districts, and especially out west, they're all part of county government. We're quasi-government, so we're in statute, even though we're non-regulatory. In Vermont, a lot of them are by county, but some are by watershed. And so the Rutland district is actually the Upper Otter Creek watershed, and then there's an Otter Creek district, that's the Addison County part. And we're the South Lake watershed, or the Poultney and Mettowee River watershed. And we do work across state lines. So the Poultney Mettowee Watershed Partnership works across state lines. We work across state lines with Washington County Soil and Water, and they have a whole group over there that's all of the conservation districts and watershed groups that work on conservation projects for the Lake Champlain draining New York lands. They all make up a group over there. So they meet quarterly, and we do once or twice a year. We meet with them, and we do exchanges of information about projects that we're working on that might be helpful to sort of trade information about, or funding sources. It's very cooperative, and fairly well sort of unified across the two states, at least in our work.
Want to mention Hilary and I see each other during the legislative session. I'm the vice chair of the Senate Ag Committee. So generally speaking, maybe once, maybe twice a session, your group comes in to sort of explain again for new members what it is that you do. And then obviously there's a funding request at the tail end too, which, that's why people come in to testify. That's part of the process. Jerremy, you're not sort of in that same position, although, I want to talk about the funding situation for both of your groups. I know, unfortunately, we were not able. We had this great opportunity back when the federal government had all these ARPA plans and all this money. We had money coming out of every pocket we could get it stuffed into, and then it was gone. And now we don't have anything except our own kind of pot to draw from. But I felt badly we were not able to give you even a little bit of a slight increase in either the general fund or the capital fund, which is the other committee I'm on with institutions. So I'm hoping that you are still obviously thriving in terms of your work. I know you've been able to add a couple, or maybe, I'm not sure how many staff members, and people, when they get a job, they like benefits and all the stuff that goes with that. So are we doing good work still, I hope?
Yes, so we actually have a new staff member who's been with us about a year, and we're adding another staff member, and we'd really like this staff member to do more community outreach. So be better integrated with select boards, planning commissions, and just let them know what we're doing so that we can work in a more integrated way with the towns. Especially because right now there are some funds available to do phosphorus reduction work, as I mentioned earlier. And so we want to make sure that towns know this funding is available, and then we can help them with grant applications. And we also offered maternity leave or family leave for the first time. So we had two of our staff had babies last summer, right during tree planting and other big projects. And they both got sort of family leave, which was exciting for us because we had never had that before. When I had my kids, it was unpaid leave, which can be challenging. So we were excited to add that as a new benefit. And we do actually have some retirement benefits now. They're sort of limited, but we do have retirement benefits. And that's all been part of having a little bit more funding from the legislature. It's increased, even though it's not as much as we would like. It has increased in the past couple of years.
And I know there's some national or federal money, too, that trickles down to you folks, too, right?
Yes, exactly. And we write grants. We write a lot of grants. We usually have 30 or so active grants at any one time. So we're sort of shuffling all those projects and trying to hire staff and make sure all the project needs and the staff needs are being met. It's definitely a big juggling act.
Lift, yeah. So, Jerremy, what about your funding efforts?
Yeah, so the vast majority of the funding for the Lake St. Catherine Association comes from donations and what we call membership dues. So every year in usually early February, late January, we do a membership drive where we ask, we send letters and do promotion around the lake community for folks to become a member of the association. It's $100 that we ask for if you're a property owner on the lake. And then we have a membership level for folks who maybe don't have a place on the lake but want to support us. We call that a supporter of Lake St. Catherine. That's $35. And then, as Hilary mentioned, the grants, we try to work with grants and go out for those funds. Luckily, we're in the Lake Champlain Basin, so we could tap into Lake Champlain Basin program funds that are available. And we have a couple of grants that we're working on that were funded through that. So it's always a challenge trying to, raise funds for all the things that we need to do for the lake. And the administration side of the grants is really challenging as well. So it's not only writing the grant, but then also administering the grant, quarterly reports, which Hilary helps out with a lot of the joint grants that we have. But it's definitely a burden for smaller associations to apply for those funds and then be able to, maintain and do all the reporting and everything else that goes along with the grants.
Yeah.
Plus, we also have to, a lot of the times we're funding all of that ahead of time to actually do the grant, and then we don't get reimbursed until the following year. So that's also can be burdensome as well.
So the association itself, I think, has 15 trustees, right?
Yes.
And you are one of 15 and kind of direct the efforts of that group. I assume not everybody is a Vermont resident because obviously you're writing up kind of a budding New York state. So I assume there's folks from other states that own cottages and come up and enjoy that too, right? Yeah,
so we've got a mixture on the board. I do a lot of the promotion and online stuff to get the word out of what we're doing. We've got our president, Jim Kanders, and our vice president, Michael Gay. We've got a treasurer, Mary Jo. And some of our board members are full-time Vermont residents, and some are like our members around the lake where they're coming in for the summer.
Sure.
So yeah, we've got a good mix of folks from all around the United States.
One of the things that I've been fortunate enough, I think twice, to attend is your annual meeting. So let's do a little plug on that if you want. As this show is going to air on the 14th, we're recording it a couple days ahead, so this will be, if you're listening, you already know it's Sunday, July 14th when you're listening to this. And so when is the meeting? Can the public come? How much? Give us all that kind of stuff.
Yep, so our annual meeting that we have every year is open to the public, and it's on July 27th. and Hilary will actually be joining us and doing a presentation on our Lake Watershed Action Plan, which I'm sure we'll talk about. And Senator Collamore, you'll be joining us as well, which we're excited about, along with your colleagues. Senator Williams is coming, and Senator Weeks.
Yep.
Patty McCoy will be joining us as
wonderful.
well.
Yeah.
Yep. And also the Wells Select Board will be joining us. So we've got good representation from our state and local reps at the meeting. And we'll give a presentation about everything that we've done over the last year for the lake and, for the benefit of Lake St. Catherine. And we'll outline all of that. And Hilary will be our special guest to talk about our Lake Watershed Action Plan.
Well, good. Yeah, was it last year, maybe the year before? I think I've been twice. The game warden was the featured speaker, and I really enjoyed that. I didn't, and you'd think when I sit on the Ag Committee that I know a little bit more than I do. I try to absorb everything I can, but he had some really interesting things to talk about. And actually, I've had a couple of game wardens on this show in the past. One of them back, I think, around late April, maybe early May. We talked a lot about bears waking up, and they're, guess what, hungry. And so don't put your bird feeders out. That was like the big message we got out. But I thought he did a great job.
Yeah, Justin Turner's our game warden. He covers, I think, at least 9 counties. So they are stretched thin, the game wardens. Yeah. We really appreciate his presence on the lake. He's done a lot of outreach with the lake community. He every month or so, he'll send us a little report that we'll post and say, hey, Justin was at the lake, and he's really all about safety and making sure people are safe on the lake. And he's not looking to, give people tickets. He's just looking to keep people safe on the lake, and everybody appreciates that. So he was a great speaker. Pat Swazi from the president of FOVLAP was also the speaker at that same meeting.
Yeah, I do remember her.
She gave a great presentation. And then the year before, we had Eric Hansen, the loon biologist expert.
That's right, yeah.
So he's been at the lake quite a bit over the last year or so. We actually had a nesting loon pair at our lake, at Lake St. Catherine, and they had 2 baby chicks for the first time at the lake. And one of them is thriving. The other one disappeared, unfortunately, soon after hatching. But we've got a beautiful pair of loons that have a loon baby chick on the lake, which is just fantastic. It's so exciting, and people around the lake are just so excited to see this.
Okay, well, let's talk a little bit about the LWAP. Is that the correct pronunciation of the acronym? This is well, I'll let Hilary talk about it. This is what you're going to talk about on the 27th?
Yes. So we have a number of projects together, and they're actually very well integrated. Mm-hmm. So we're working on at least 4 projects together that all integrate together very nicely. But the LWAP is the Lake Watershed Action Plan, and that's kind of the overarching project. So we're looking at the opportunities around the lake, both in the watershed and along the shoreline and in the lake itself, where we might be able to make improvements and better protect the health of the lake, mitigate more phosphorus and more runoff and more salt and other pollutants that might get to the lake. So we're working with landowners all throughout the watershed and then all along the shoreline. And it's been exciting, and there's sort of some state guidance about how to go about doing this work, but we've also added our own pieces to that. And I don't know if you want me to...
Sure.
Okay. So one of the, there are a lot of wetlands in the Lake St. Catherine watershed, both down along the water and also back up in the woods. So we've made it a point of visiting those wetlands. We look at the watershed, so the area draining to the wetlands, to see what percentage of the Lake St. Catherine overall watershed is actually treated through wetlands. We look at the function of those wetlands. Are they providing flood protection? Are they treating polluted water? How are they working? And then we're also looking at forest blocks. So where the forested land is contiguous and not fragmented, we're making note of that, reaching out to those landowners, asking if they want any site visits to look at forest roads, any sort of erosion problems they might be interested in mitigating on their property. Streams, we'll be walking the main contributing streams, which we haven't done yet, but we're excited to do this summer. And then finally, we are looking at the cross culverts. So all of those culverts that drain directly into the lake without treatment under the roads, we're looking also at the watershed. So what area of land is draining to that point and then crossing the road, and what is in that watershed. Is it forested? Is it developed land? Is there something active happening that's creating bare soil? And then is there space on the lake side of that cross culvert where we might be able to treat water coming through? And these would be very simple practices where we slow water down. We try to provide an opportunity for sediment to drop out. And then we look for partners, the landowner, the town, maybe the funder, who can help maintain those small, kind of simple practices over time.
So it is possible to create a wetland.
Yes, so these would probably be more like settling pools, where water is able to pool for a little bit and drop out sediment, and then it would continue on its way toward the lake, but it would be cleaner. And you can drop about half the sediment and phosphorus in a very simple settling pool very quickly. So just having something like that at the end of each cross culvert would make a big difference for the nutrients entering Lake St. Catherine and Lake Champlain eventually.
That's what it's all about. The so-called 3-acre rule comes into play with a lot of the, area businesses and state properties and everything else. And it's all because of the Lake Champlain watershed and the what is the acronym there? The
TMDL.
TMDL, yeah. So that's
the
very
Clean Water Act acronym.
Yeah. It seems like it was involved. Nancy McGuire, is she still running the Rutland District?
She is, yes.
Okay. So she had a really neat thing at one of the schools. I think it was northeast, maybe northwest. Right out in back, the Otter Creek goes in back of it, and they had built some sort of kind of retention pond, as you explained it, rather than have the driveway and the parking lot of the school kind of just tipped in a certain direction and have the stormwater runoff go directly into Otter Creek. There was a filtering process, and it was pretty fascinating to be at that when it was first going in. Yeah,
that's exactly right. And we create those practices at a variety of scales. So a parking area for a camp that fits 2 cars could have its own little garden area at the edge that captures runoff and infiltrates it. Or you could have something at the end of these cross culverts, or something even bigger. Some of our projects, like in Poultney, for example, manage runoff from a couple of acres.
Yeah. For those of you just joining us, where have you been? No, we're talking with Hilary Solomon, the manager of the Poultney Mettowee Conservation District, and Jerremy Jones is the trustee at the Lake St. Catherine Association. We're about halfway through the program here, but we do need to take our first break, and we will do that and come back in just a moment.
It's summertime in Vermont, and you know what that means? It's time to schedule your roof replacement. The Vermont Construction Company's roofing division is scheduling now for summer roof replacements. They will go to your home or business, give you a free estimate, and answer all of your questions. They are fast and efficient. Most homes are done in a day. Financing available through Vermont State Employee Credit Union. Don't delay. Visit VTRoofing.com today to secure your estimate. That's VTRoofing.com. Vermont Construction Company. We know roofs.
Rutland is a working-class town, and the Rutland Area Food Co-op is the store for the working family. Want to stretch your food budget? Start with local Monument Milk for just $4.39 a gallon. Discounted pricing on over 200 products throughout the store, and the bulk section with over 130 products to choose from. When you buy in bulk, you have the choice to purchase as little or as much as you want, which is great for recipes and stretching your food budget. The Rutland Area Food Co-op, Rutland's best-kept secret. 3 Squares, Vermont accepted.
It's better over here. If you're 55 and up, T-Mobile has an exclusive rate plan just for you. Right now, get 2 lines of talk, text, and data for just $30 a line. That's a 45% savings versus Verizon and AT&T. Plus, you can get one of the latest 5G phones free when you add a line. That's right, a free 5G phone. Experience all this and more on America's largest 5G network. So why wait? At T-Mobile, customers 55 and up can get 2 lines of talk, text, and data for only $30 a line. Just go to T-Mobile.com/choice55 or visit your local store to make the switch.
With AutoPay using debit or bank account plus taxes and fees, 45% off 2 lines versus AT&T Starter and Verizon Welcome. Plan benefits vary. Free phones up to $300 off with 24 monthly bill credits and qualifying new line for well-qualified customers plus tax and $35 device connection charge. Contact us before canceling entire account to continue remaining bill credits, and if you pay off device early. See details at T-Mobile.com.
We're back on Catamount Community Connection. I'm Brian Collamore, your host, and each Sunday for an hour we get together with all kinds of different folks. And today we are lucky enough to have, I'll give Jerremy the lead on this one, Jerremy Jones from the Lake St. Catherine Association, and Hilary Solomon, who's the manager of the Poultney Mettowee Conservation District. So I know we wanted to talk a little about the project development grant, which got funded by some of the money from the Lake Champlain Basin project, right? Is that about run its course, or are we still doing it, or what's going on with that?
Oh, so a couple years ago, I think it was by now, we had a joint grant with Hilary's group, and I think the total grant was $100,000, right? And half of that went to...
so half of it is looking at projects that were identified around the lake that are stormwater projects, and then the other half is looking at our old stream assessments from 20 years ago that we were very excited about doing 20 years ago, and they came out with a sort of vague list of projects, but not much that was very specific. So it's sort of this two-part project where we're looking at stormwater projects, which are very specific. We know where they're located. We know what they're going to be, but they need to be developed more. And then we had this very abstract list of hundreds of projects all across the conservation district that were not well, developed or spelled out. And we really wanted to get back to those projects because we had a lot of information about the types of projects available, but no specifics. So we're diving back into those.
And on the lakeside, the half of that grant, the $50,000, was to develop those projects that were identified in the stormwater master plan that was created by Hilary back in 2018 and 2018.
Yeah, 2018, we finished that up.
Yep. So that had a list of 50 projects that could use some mitigation of stormwater running into the lake carrying phosphorus. 6 projects were completed out of the first run, and this grant was to fund an additional 10 to 12 projects to be designed. So back in September, we had a meeting. Senator Collamore was there.
I was.
Yep. And it was a community meeting in Wells, and we outlined what we thought were the top projects that were still left of the 50 or the 44 that were still remaining, and had a great discussion with the community. And we picked... I think it ended up being like 12, right?
Yeah, so we ended up rolling some of the projects together and doing more sort of assessment and scoping on them because we realized we had like whole hillsides that were creating drainage issues. And while we had identified a couple of points where they caused direct problems with landowners and drainage, we really needed to look at that whole area. So we ended up with, I think, 10 discrete projects, but of those 10, we had rolled in another 5 or so that'll be developed better now.
Yeah, and it was great to have the whole community that was there talking about the projects and picking the ones that we thought would have the most impact. And then Evan from Fitzgerald Environmental was there taking notes, and so he's going to be starting to work on those designs. And then once those designs are complete, we'll be able to go to the QUISPs.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, another acronym for everybody. So the Clean Water Service Provider which is the South Basin?
Yeah, South Lake. So it's a partnership with Poultney Mettowee Conservation District and the Rutland Regional Planning Commission. And that is the funding I keep referring to, that we have funding. It's a little complicated to get, but it's available, and it would be perfect for these projects.
Yep, so that'll be the next thing that we'll, once those are designed, we'll work up a grant and try to get some of those funds to actually implement those projects around the lake.
Yep, and they're well underway, so the designs are almost complete, and we look forward to having a sort of a wrap-up meeting with the landowners who are hosting the projects, because these projects, our original projects were mostly on town properties, but these are on private properties, so we really have landowners who are, committing some of their time and property to help mitigate the pollution going into the lake, which is fantastic.
Yeah, it's great to see the involvement that people see. It obviously impacts them because it's near them, but to see them want to be involved and actually do something good for the lake is great to see. That's what we like.
I'm wondering, how often do cottages sort of change hands? And with it, the need for continued education. If somebody has never owned a lakeside cottage before, they don't know enough maybe about everything to facilitate what you're both trying to do. you're talking about two different things, at least my view, stormwater runoff and then also septic system containment sort of things. I mean, people come to a cottage and they live there and they create a certain amount of waste and they have to get rid of it. And the days of it being able to just sort of run a pipe under everything and not care about it are long gone. So I'm assuming now we got mostly septic systems. I don't know that there's a municipal sewer system that runs around the lake.
Yeah,
so
there's not.
Education's really important. I guess that was where I was trying to go with my long-winded question.
Yeah, that's a big part of it. And I think we work really hard on that with our website and social media. We're always posting things there to keep folks up to date with rules and regulations. There's the Shoreland Protection Act, obviously, that people need to follow. And there is turnover, obviously, on a place like that where people are selling their camps and new folks are moving in. So we're always trying to reach those new folks. But I think we are seeing some good results from our educational outreach. We'll have a new person email into our website and say, hey, I'm a new camp owner and I got a question about this. And then we can direct them to the proper website from the DEC to show them, oh, this is what you do for your dock, or this is what you need to do for your land. And then we've got the Lakewise program, which ties right into this, which is a program that we've been working with Hilary for the past, this will be our 6th year, I think, right?
Yeah, we started in 2018, so.
Yeah. So this is great. A great program that we've gotten funding for from the Lake Champlain Basin program. Every year since I think the first year, we've applied for grants, and we've been working with lake owners all around the lake to teach them and also implement things. So Hilary's got the
Lake Education and Action program. Is that what your LEAP program?
LEAP.
Which was like a precursor to some of this. Yeah, we started that back in 2003, actually.
It's funny how things go. I was in health and welfare my first term, and there were more acronyms having to do with health and welfare. I mean, literally hundreds of them, and I didn't get them all committed to memory. But it's funny how we kind of rely on acronyms after a while rather than saying the whole thing. So every now and then you'll say something, and I'm going, geez, I wonder what that is. But you've always explained it, so I do appreciate that. One of the things that I did want to talk about, and I'm hoping that we are on a trajectory in the right direction, because we hear an awful lot about the Burlington Beach getting closed because of the blue-green algae moving in. Usually it's a little later in the season, maybe late July or certainly in August, that we hear about that. But I'm curious, overall, and maybe your group, the Federation of Vermont Lakes and Ponds, is in a better position to sort of thumbnail this, but are we getting good results, or what's the condition of our situation right now? Is it getting better or worse?
Hard to say. I know if you were to visit FOVLab's website, vermontlakes.org, they've got a couple of articles there that were written by scientists that talk about phosphorus and talk about blue-green algae and what the conditions are for that to be created. If you read about that, she talks about how the cyanobacteria is in the lake if the criteria is just right for temperature and sunlight and lack of wind,
water depth.
Yeah, so it's all, if the ingredients are just right, that's when it'll happen. So it's in every lake. It's just whether or not the conditions are just right for it to bloom.
Yeah, and there's a certain amount of legacy phosphorus, certainly in Lake Champlain. A lot of it, not all of it, but a lot of it tied directly to agricultural practices of the past. But the farmers, in my view, have at least stepped up to the plate and are doing their best to lessen the amount of phosphorus that gets to the lake from their farm. And there's various techniques and ways to do that. But also the state of Vermont, and anybody really with a parking lot or 3 acres or more of impervious surface, is really part of the problem too. Again, on the western side of the lake, it's going to feed into Lake Champlain, and for the most part, that's a phosphorus issue. On the eastern side, it's more of a nitrogen issue, and You can mitigate that in different ways, I'm sure. But it's nice to see at least that people are aware of it and are trying their best to do the right thing. I've always found in my 73 years that if you can get someone educated and they honestly want to do something, you get much better results than if you, regardless of whether they want to or not, you force them to do it. It just doesn't ever seem to work as well if you make it a law or regulate it that way. But that's just me.
Yeah, and that's what we try to do, and I'm sure Hilary's group tries to do as well. Show people that there's some easy things you can do, and it makes a big difference for the lake. Having your lawn all the way to the shoreline is not good for the lake. With the Lakewise program, Hilary's group would come in and say, "Hey, let's put a buffer near the shoreline. Let's put a little rain garden over here to catch all this rain that's coming off your roof before it runs into the lake." And those little tiny changes don't have a huge impact on your property and can actually make it look nice. We've done a lot of work at our place recently to put in some rain gardens and to put in a buffer at our shoreline, and it's beautiful. You can have all kinds of different flowers and plantings and things, and it doesn't have to be a thing that it makes your place look bad. And that's what we try to get that point across. A little bit of work, you're doing a lot of good for the lake.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think the nice thing about those Lakewise assessments is that they're broken down into small pieces. So we look at your driveway, and we look at your, the drainage off your rooftop, for example, and we look at your shoreline. But each one, and there'll be recommendations. Usually there are multiple, like 3 to 5 recommendations for each one. And people pick and choose the ones that resonate with them and the ones that they think would be attractive and doable and easy to maintain. And a lot of times they come back year after year and say that they're ready to do something else on their property. So it's been this really nice relationship building between our organizations and the landowners who are they're very invested.
Yeah, and it's great because the funds from the grant can help pay for the plantings from Hilary's greenhouse.
The native plant nursery.
Yeah, the native plant. That's what I was looking for. The native plant nursery. And
is there an acronym for that?
Probably there is. It doesn't make a word though, so we don't use it as often.
And the staff does such a good job every year at everybody's properties. They're working in the heat. They're doing plantings. They're doing all this great stuff for the shoreline. And then at the end of the year, Hilary's got this great report that shows this is how many plantings we did, this is how much buffers we added to the lake, and just every year we're building year over year and making a big difference around the lake.
I think it was nice too because that original Lake Education Action Program was designed as an internship for high school students, and the idea was that it was very hands-on. So we would go and we would talk to the landowners pre-Lakewise assessment and just identify potential projects, and then the kids would come and implement those projects. And so we had this history of working with the landowners and implementing projects. So when we had Lakewise assessments, which are relatively new, so we sort of had this history of implementing projects, and so they went together really well. LEAP and Lakewise are partnered, and so some funds come from UVM, the Lake Champlain Sea Grant, some come from the Basin Program, and those integrate together very nicely as sort of part of this overall project that we work on.
And the homeowners are also contributing. They're doing a lot of work, and they're also, even though some of the stuff that we can do is covered, they're also taking the recommendations and doing things on their own, which is great.
Yeah.
There was an intersection with, and I'll say at Castleton University, I have a lot of trouble going the other way with that. It's still CU to me. Forgive me, but that's just me. But you did have someone that was working at, a student, I think, at Castleton at one point that was part of this too, right?
Well, Andy from Castleton University. How do you say his last name?
Andy Vermilia.
Vermilia, thank you, because I would have mispronounced it. He's doing a lot of work with Hilary on the streams of Lake St. Catherine.
Right, so he did a lot. So it's actually very hard to fund some of the water quality monitoring that is very helpful in terms of understanding where phosphorus is coming from and how it's getting into the lake. So he was able to fund that through his own university funds. He had an intern, has had a few interns actually. And so they do flow monitoring, and then they collect phosphorus samples. So they actually are able to build a relationship between, depending on the flow in the stream, and they've looked at a couple, Endless Brook is one of them, how much phosphorus is going in. So we don't need to measure every minute or every day. We just measure flow with a flow meter, and we can then sort of build out what the phosphorus loading is. So that's been fantastic. Because we'll get a sense from the watershed, like how much is coming in from the Sendlitz Brook watershed, which is the largest stream that drains into Lake St. Catherine.
And then another cool thing, I think I had mentioned to Hilary a little while back, but in August, the DEC and our limnologist will be coming to the lake, and we'll be going out in a boat and taking a core sediment sample from the lake, and then that'll be dated in the cores to see how far back we go. And then they also analyze the datums that are in there, and then they can tell based on what species those are, what the lake has processed in phosphorus over the years, so we can see how we've progressed over the years, how we are way back when and today. And then following, what we'll do every 5 to 10 years, we'll take another sample, add that to the list, and we'll see how we're doing every year. So that's an exciting thing coming up in August.
We need to take another break, but when we come back, and I don't know in what order in terms of importance these are, but you started to mention invasive species, stormwater runoff, and certainly climate change are all factors that have direct impacts on a lot of the work that both Hilary and Jerremy do. So we'll talk a little bit more about that when we come back in just a moment.
Ready to beat the heat? Your neighborhood Teddybrook convenience store has you covered. From cold drinks and ice to propane for the grill or quick meals that won't heat up the kitchen. Having a party? A day at the lake? Teddybrook convenience store is your quick stop to get everything on your list so you have more time for summer fun. With great prices, clean stores, and friendly smiles, your local Teddybrook convenience store will be your one-stop shop all summer long.
It's better over here. If you're 55 and up, T-Mobile has an exclusive rate plan just for you. Right now, get 2 lines of talk, text, and data for just $30 a line. That's a 45% savings versus Verizon and AT&T. Plus, you can get one of the latest 5G phones free when you add a line. That's right, a free 5G phone. Experience all this and more on America's largest 5G network. So why wait? At T-Mobile, customers 55 and up can get 2 lines of talk, text, and data for only $30 a line. Just go to T-Mobile.com/choice55 or visit your local store to make the switch.
With AutoPay using debit or bank account plus taxes and fees, 45% off 2 lines versus AT&T Starter and Verizon Welcome. Plan benefits vary. Free phones up to $300 off with 24 monthly bill credits and qualifying new line for well-qualified customers plus tax and $35 device connection charge. Contact us before canceling entire account to continue remaining bill credits, and if you pay off device early. See details at T-Mobile.com.
For many servicemen and women, the battle doesn't end when they come home. And I know, because I too struggle with the invisible wounds of service. Pups for Patriots and Sam literally changed my life. If you're a veteran or know a veteran struggling with post-traumatic stress or a traumatic brain injury, go to AmericanHumane.org to learn more about the Pups for Patriots Service Dog Program. Let's give our veterans a fighting chance.
A message from American Humane.
We are back on Catamount Community Connection. I'm Brian Collamore. Our show, by the way, I should mention again, is brought to you by the Rutland County Agricultural Society, which has brought you the Vermont State Fair at Rutland since 1846, and the 178th Fair is right around the corner. If you don't have tickets for Tyler Hubbard yet, he will end the fair that Saturday night, the 17th, and it's probably going to be a sold-out show, so I would urge you to buy your tickets for Tyler Hubbard if you don't have them yet, ParamountVT.org. And again, we've been talking with Jerremy Jones from the Lake St. Catherine Association and also Hilary Solomon from the Poultney Mettowee Conservation District. And I thought in the final about 14 minutes we have, we could talk about some overarching issues that have direct impact on some of the work that is being done by both of the fine folks that we have on today. We could talk a little bit about the invasive species, and there isn't, I mean, people always say milfoil when you say that, but there's other stuff that's also of concern. And then, of course, we got the stormwater issue and the runoff and the climate change issue as well. And certainly in the last, well, just a couple of weeks ago, we had another storm situation, which we, used to talk about 50-year events, and then it got to be a 100-year event. Now it seems like it's every year event. And towns like Cambridge and Plainfield and Barry got absolutely pummeled last week. As a matter of fact, as much as 6 inches of rain fell within a 4-hour period of time, and there's just no way to handle that safely. We had 2 people die as a result, and obviously a lot of property damage. So that is probably a bigger issue than we have time in the last 14 minutes to talk about. But let's talk a little bit about the invasive species and how we deal with it. Because there probably are still, believe it or not, some lakes and ponds that don't have that, right? So prevention would seem to be their way out.
Yeah, prevention is the key. It's the cheapest, even though there is a cost involved, obviously, for prevention. It's the cheapest thing you can do because once you get an invasive, you're most likely not going to be able to eradicate it. So the state of Vermont has a great program called the Greeter Program. And lake associations like the Lake St. Catherine Association, they fund a greeter program at our boat launch in Wells. And the DEC trains folks who participate in this, and we pay them over the summer months from Labor Day to Memorial Day. And then we also cover fishing tournaments and holidays whenever there's a lot of boat traffic. Because we can't fund somebody to be there every day of every hour of every day. So we focus on high traffic, and what they do is they will take a look at the trailer and the boat coming into the lake to make sure that they don't have an invasive species somewhere on the trailer or in the boat. And then when they leave, they also check to make sure that the invasive species that might be in that lake are not on the trailer for when they go to the next lake. So in our case, we check to make sure that there's no milfoil on a trailer or a boat when it leaves. So it can be very expensive to work to control an invasive that you have in a lake, like milfoil, which is what we battle with every year. We also have an invasive fish species called the alewife, which had a huge impact on the water clarity of Lake St. Catherine back in 1997 when it was introduced. So there's no real way to control those other than Fish and Wildlife do stock the lake with rainbows, trout, and brown trout, and they do eat those to hopefully control the levels of them. But it definitely had an impact on our water clarity. So that's what the greeters are for. That's why it's important that there's many more invasive species, both plant and animal, that could end up in your lake, and you want to do everything you can to make sure that they don't end up there.
Yeah. I've been there when, and it's great when you have sort of a real affable person that is the greeter and not someone that's kind of gruff and it's always, again, I just go back to this, it's always better if you can convince them that it was their idea to clean their boat and trailer before they go in rather than his or her idea. But that's a great program, and hopefully we'll continue to be able to fund that through the DEC efforts, because it is important. If you could even cut that back to it's only 3 or 4% of the boats coming in, you've done a good job there. The stormwater issue we got, again, with the, and I guess there's an intersection and a relationship with that and climate change. Are we going to get these sort of unbelievably water events every couple years like we did? Well, we just had one last summer, right, which ruined a whole bunch of communities. Luckily, Rutland County was, for the most part, it was spared. Killington got pretty well hammered the year before this. And again, just recently, last week, we had Barry City, Plainfield, Cambridge, St. Johnsbury, just 6 inches in 4 hours on it. Where can you put that amount of water without doing some damage? So I don't know all the answers to that piece of it, but bigger culverts and that kind of stuff. And we did some really good work, I think, when we had Irene come through a while back, and we changed the way that we build bridges and culverts and roads, but I'm not sure how wide a culvert has to be anymore.
Yeah, I think I get asked a lot, is the lake improving? Is all this work that we're doing, are all these funds we're spending helping to improve Lake Champlain, for example? And the water quality results are showing that in our area, Lake Champlain is holding steady. So our phosphorus amounts are fairly level. And I feel like that with the change in rainfall that we're getting, with these really big events that we're seeing, with the amount of nutrients and sediment that empty into the lake every time we have a big event like that, or we have, mud season 4 times in the winter instead of just once. The fact that we're holding steady shows that property owners, farmers, towns, people are really taking this seriously. They're implementing the projects. We are getting the projects on the ground. We are making an improvement. And that in a way that is a win for us. And we're just this continual outreach and work with landowners and everybody's sort of looking to their own runoff and their own property and their own types of practices that they would like to implement it's just going to be a big community effort, I think.
And as far as Lake St. Catherine is concerned, I think all the work that we've been doing over the last several years with Hilary's group has definitely made an impact on the lake, and I think we can see it in the data. We just got some reporting from the DEC last year that our summer phosphorus is in the category that they consider considerably improving, I think is what they called it. So to me, that means that folks are doing what they need to be doing around the lake. The stormwater projects that we're doing around the lake are having an impact, and it was great to see that. And our water clarity numbers also look to be improving, not as much as we would probably like to see, but and we have been spared from these storms in Poultney and Wells over the last several years. Even though the water clarity did dip after the storm last year, we did get a lot of rain at the lake. But overall, it looks like our numbers are getting better. Which is what we like to see, and as compared to maybe Lake Champlain, where they're maintaining all that work just to maintain where they're at, shows you that work needs to be done and needs to be funded, or there's going to be a significant impact.
It seems to me that Vermonters are perhaps a bit more caring in terms of being willing to instigate certain procedures. I can't speak for New York. Obviously, we share a lake with New York, and then there's an intersection of Canada as well. And I don't know what efforts there are in the other country or in the other state that match our own. But overall, I think Vermonters really do have a kind of a soft spot for our environment. So I'll just make that kind of a statement. And
I agree.
I agree too, and I think the kudos to the farmers who've implemented so many acres, thousands and thousands of acres of cover crops every winter. Yeah, that's made a big difference, right? The no-till practices, and they've taken those on, and even though they didn't know what the results would be in terms of their crops, they did it and tried it, and are continuing to do that. So that's been really helpful too.
We've got about couple minutes, maybe 3 minutes left. Let's plug the dinner one more time if you want, Jeremy. And Hilary, if you have any last minute things to add as well. Yeah, so our annual meeting will be July 27th at the Lake St. Catherine Country Club. You can RSVP to attend on our website, lakestcatherine.org. We have a few dinners left. We have been selling out every year, which is great. We've had great attendance from the lake community and our state and local reps. So we sell out pretty quickly. So if anybody's interested in attending and going to the dinner, please RSVP as soon as you can. And you can also come and not have dinner. You could be part of the meeting and then head out after the meeting is complete. And you'll hear our guest speaker, Hilary.
Yes, and I would say if you live in the forested headwaters of the Lake St. Catherine watershed, we would love to meet you and wander your property and just talk about the ways you'd like to manage your property and your forest roads and any stream erosion issues you might be seeing. So that would be Endless Brook Road, Sawmill Hill Road. Those we're especially looking at the forested areas to the east of the lake. And then it's a great time to sign up for any implementation projects or lake-wise assessments down by the lake. We have some spots left over, so you can get in touch either with me directly through our website, which is PMNRCD.org, or through Jeremy at the Lake St. Catherine Association website, or either of our emails, and we're happy to sign more folks up for assessments or buffer plantings, rain gardens, those type of projects.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you both for being willing to come in again and educate our listeners, if you will, about some of the things that are going on. Love to have you come back again, and we will see you both on the 27th, and looking forward to that. And we will see you all listening next Sunday on Catamount Community Connection.